All right. All right. We are live. Hello, everybody in the chat. My name is Nate, the lawyer, and I'm here with Good Logic and Southern Law. How you guys doing today? What's up?
What's happening,
What up?
guys? Anything going on the planet? I don't know.
We got so much. We got like so much stuff going on. Texas is essentially about to fight the union over the border, which is crazy. We got that going on. We got like so much stuff going on. But yes, somebody's put in the chat. Nate is late. Yes, Nate is late. Nate is late. So I am not EricHunley, obviously, as you guys know. And this is this week's legal panel. Now, we have so much to talk about, and we got an hour and a half to do it. So we are going to jump into it. So first case. Now, you guys, I think in the chat, and all the lawyers here know, if you drink and drive and happen to kill somebody, you're probably going to go to jail, right? Involuntary manslaughter, right? If you drink, if you and a woman have sex and then she says it wasn't consensual because she was too drunk, you're probably going to go to jail for blank. So generally, being too inebriated isn't an excuse for criminal activity. But in California, we have a very interesting issue that just came up. This woman has stabbed her boyfriend over 100 times, and she is facing no prison time. Matter of fact, she's just got 100 hours of community service. I am not joking. Here is her story.
Come to a case out of Ventura County. A Thousand Oaks woman will serve no prison time for stabbing a man more than 100 times. She was found guilty by a jury, but she was also found to be in a cannabis-induced psychosis.
NBC4's Comer Dickerson joins us live from the Ventura County Courthouse with the outrage from the family of the man killed and what the prosecutor has to say. Karma.
Yes, that man killed was just 26 years old, stabbed 108 times by a then 27-year-old woman. Now, the prosecutor wanted jail time. The man's family wanted jail time, but a judge disagreed.
When this woman was wheeled mumbling and bloody from a Thousand Oaks apartment in May of 2018, all that was clear publicly at the time was that she was hurt and a man was dead. It would turn out that she, Bryn Spetcher, killed the man, Chad O'Melia, in a marijuana-induced psychotic state. And Tuesday, a judge decided she would not serve any prison time for doing it.
This guy just gave everybody in this county a license to kill people after they smoked marijuana.
So now, so we don't have to watch the whole thing. The end of this is that she got 2 years probation. And she's got 100 hours of community service, and the whole thing is outrage. So, what do you guys think about this story? Was this justice?
Well, normally if you have voluntary intoxication, it's not going to be a defense to a specific intent crime, right? But I think what's crazy about this one, or sounds crazy, is the judge seemed to take it a lot farther than that and say, hey, listen, she just went out of control on this weed, bro. So we can't put her in jail for that. This could have been any of us, right? We got the bad stuff. And I don't know what the judge was thinking. Was he thinking, well, you should be able to expect to smoke a little bit of weed and burn down a joint, and you're not going to stab somebody 100 times, so this wasn't a predictable outcome? I don't know what the judge was thinking here. But she did stab herself so she was consistently acting crazy. And a dog,
she
too,
stabbed
right?
the dog. Yeah, she stabbed the dog. So she stabbed the dog, the boyfriend.
Who are we to judge? Come on. Oh, let he who is without sin be the first to cast a stone. Oh, please. Like, you've never gone off on some weed-induced 100-stabbing, dog-slaying spree. Please. That's like a Tuesday.
But at least jail time. Now, what do you think, Dani? No jail time? Is that justice? Is no jail time for this woman justice?
No, I think she deserved some jail time, or at least some sort of involuntary commitment in a mental hospital, right? So if we're saying, okay, yeah, she definitely has some insanity elements here, and that is a plea that is available in the state of California. It's a defense that's available that they hung their hat on for good reason. It's not just that she stabbed him 108 times. Was it 108 or 100?
Yeah, 108 times.
Yeah, 108 times. She also stabbed her service dog, not his service dog, her beloved service dog she stabbed. She also stabbed herself, and they ended up having to use a taser and deployed batons to get her to stop, to be able to handle her and arrest her. So do I believe that she was in full-blown psychosis at the time? Yes, absolutely. Is weed-induced psychosis a thing? Absolutely. And do people need to be aware of that? Yes, because you don't know whether or not you're predisposed to that psychosis or to that reaction or when that will kick in either. So you could be a chronic weed user for, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, whether that be recreationally or medically. And then one day it just snaps. That can happen, and it does happen. However, but there's unfortunately not a lot of research on it because the feds have, basically banned any research being done on it for decades. And so we don't have a ton of information there. Do I think that it's just the actual sentencing? No, because the victims already made it very clear that they wanted to see some jail time. The communities made it clear that they wanted jail time. And the judge went off the handle, in my opinion, by not ordering some sort of jail time or some sort of restriction on her beyond community service and probation. That to me is offensive to justice.
Yeah, I will say, don't get me wrong. I do understand. I think the responsibility is with her. Is when she took the hit of that bong, then she's responsible for what happens. Just like when you take a shot of that alcohol, then you get behind a car, you may be drunk out of your mind where you don't know what you're doing. But it's the act of doing something that could lead to that outcome. And I also would say too, if the argument here is that she was temporarily insane, then why find her guilty of anything, right? Because you don't have any mens rea at that point, right? So yep. It's kind of like we're going to find her guilty of something but then we're not going to give her any time. It doesn't add up.
I wonder if it came out during the case whether she had a history of smoking marijuana, so that would lead you to think maybe she got some that was bad and put her in this psychosis, versus, hey, this was the first hit I got and boy did it kick off. I probably won't do that again.
I want to know who her attorney is. I mean, that
so
guy
great,
must be
right?
Eckley Bailey.
Oh my God, Sean, potentially criminal. What's going on? We're talking about the woman who stabbed her boyfriend over 100 times and got 2 years probation and $100 of community service.
I mean, she should go buy a lottery ticket after that. No, I'm serious. Like that is a phenomenal outcome, and I think that judge is basically kind of holding up that stereotype of you can get away with whatever you want in California, because she stabbed a guy 108 times, and she was voluntarily intoxicated, and but that's part of the issue. Is that's why you don't, I doubt that weed was bought from a dispensary, so that's why you don't smoke street drugs, because they might cause you to go crazy. So I'm truly surprised she got that, a slap on the wrist, basically.
Well, I hope other defense attorneys are watching this, because you could have Taylor Swift at a Chiefs game induced psychosis. I occasionally suffer from pizza induced psychosis, and I'm just wondering what I can get away with while under I'm not in control of my actions. If you're trying to take the last piece of pepperoni pizza from me, I can't be held responsible for that.
All right, now before we move on to this next story, I got to say one thing. I got to give a disclaimer. So the YouTube gods don't demonetize this. What you are about to hear is a U.S. senator in a public hearing about books in public schools. These books are being advocated by the people who you will see on screen to be placed in public schools for 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders to read. That is the context in which these things. Now, the reason why I said that, because I said that before I played it on my video, and it was YouTube blessed us. So that's why I'm saying it exactly word for word again. This is a U.S. Senate hearing. Now, for context,
wait, so you're saying it blessed you in a good way, or are you being sarcastic?
No, it blessed me in a good way. It left it out. So,
can I just add one thing about that California case before we move on? It'll take 2 seconds. Joe brought up the point that it's proof that you can get away with anything in California. And one other similar case is a guy who repeatedly, he was alcoholic, and he would repeatedly get drunk, beat the crap out of his girlfriends, and get away with it until eventually he ended up murdering his girlfriend, got 0 jail time, again, put on probation, moved here to Utah, did the same thing, again, 0 jail time, put on probation. So it's not that this is just, oh, this is some chick and that's why she got away with it. I want to be clear. I think Joe's analysis is more correct, that this is a California problem and a lack of serious prosecution, not serious prosecution, a lack of serious sentencing amongst the judicial system in general.
Yeah, definitely.
I suspect Sarah Boone's eyebrows went up if she's had the chance to hear about this case, a new angle.
Change of venue to California.
Yeah, please take me to California. So, just so everybody, so we understand, Mobs of Liberty is a group of activists who essentially said there are certain books that shouldn't be in public schools. They say they should be in public libraries. Buy the book should not be banned, but they say it shouldn't be in public schools. Now, for context, before we get into the argument that's being made by Joy Reid why these books should be in schools, I want to give you the context of what they're actually arguing about. So here is, again, Senator John Kennedy at the Senate hearing reading excerpts from the books that are supposed to be made available to 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. This is what they're advocating for. So here we go.
Let's take two books that have been much discussed. The first one is called All Boys Aren't Blue, and I will quote from it. I put some lube on and got him on his knees, and I began to slide into him from behind. I pulled out of him and kissed him while he masturbated. He asked me to turn over while he slipped a condom on himself. This was my ass, and I was struggling to imagine someone inside me. He got on top and slowly inserted himself into me. It was the worst pain I think I have ever felt in my life. Eventually, I felt a mix of pleasure with the pain. Close quote. All Boys Aren't Blue. The second is another much discussed book. I'm sure you're familiar with it. It's called Genderqueer. Okay. Let me read an excerpt from that. Quote, I got a new strap-on harness today. I can't wait to put it on you. It will fit my favorite dildo perfectly. You're going to look so hot. I can't wait to have your cock in my mouth. I'm going to give you the blowjob of your life. Then I want you inside of me. End quote.
Okay, so those are quotes from the books that they're advocating to put in public schools with 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. Those are literally quotes from the book. Now, we're going to morph here to now Joy Ann Reid, who's advocating for those books to be in public schools against Moms for Liberty, was saying those books should not be in public schools. Here's a quick back and forth about it.
Gambia, Moms for Liberty activists are using booklooks.com, and it's essentially a cliff notes for books.
Yeah.
So you go through without even having to read the book. I'm going to just hold it up so our audience can see what it looks like. This is the one for All Boys Aren't Blue, which is one of the books Moms for Liberty has.
Everyone should go and see the content in this book. That's such a good idea.
And so what happens is you can do keyword searches and find certain keywords.
Like rape.
You can find
or anal rape or dildo.
You can find all sorts of
types
keywords.
of words. But like
wait, hold on, wait. Then you can answer. I'm going to give you time to answer, but I got to ask you first.
No, yeah,
and so what you find is the keywords that you find, the N-word, anything, words like you just used, then you'll get out of context passages from the book. And then based on that, Moms for Liberty members are going to places like Broward County School Board meetings, reading out of context passages from these books, and then demanding that the school board remove them.
So what's
that? Out of context?
I'm asking.
What is out? What is the context
that you have and other Moms for Liberty advocates have to decide that a book, an award-winning book like All Boys Aren't Blue,
Ooh,
is
award-winning
appropriate for students to read? What is your
What a
expertise?
tragic story of a young man who's anally raped by his adult family member. So you have incest, rape, pedophilia. Joy, you said you'd let me answer, so I'm going to answer
Please
for
do.
you. In what context is a strap-on dildo acceptable for public school? Just I mean, that's my question to you. Tell me what the context around the strap-on dildo or the rape of a minor child by
Good
a
answer.
teacher.
Hold on a second.
No,
wait,
we're
hold on.
talking about
No, no, no.
public school.
One moment.
All right.
So now you've asked me questions.
Sure.
I'm gonna answer it.
Okay.
Well, who is the main character? What's the name of the main character in All Boys Aren't Blue?
You're asking me right now.
You just
to
gave me
name-
very specific information about
cares?
this book, so you're
Yeah, who cares? Yeah.
presenting yourself as somebody expert.
She asked
We're just
you
gonna
for
gloss
the
over the rape.
context.
Who's the main character in the
The,
book?
the main character is the
What's his name?
She's trying to burden shift.
I know.
You're giving me very
Well-
specific information that is.
You're asking.
Now, that was obviously because she's trying to pretend that she doesn't know, but she did name the main character is George. He is the author of the book, and the book is about her. So that was supposed to be her gotcha moment. You actually didn't read the book, you just saw the excerpt.
Yeah.
So now I'm pushing it back to you guys. This is what was that out of because anything that was read by Senator Kennedy, is there any context in which that should be allowed in public schools?
No.
Public schools is a broad term. Okay. So I will say if a 16, 17, 18-year-old is reading it, I don't have a problem with that. We're talking about third graders. I have a problem with it. So,
yeah, so all right. So just for context, they were saying that was Moms for Liberty was saying, yes, if we're talking about, higher levels, but she was like in a public school library. If this book is available to anybody who comes in and says, I want to grab this book. And she was saying, we don't want that. We don't want anybody to be able to grab this book. So if all students are able to get it, then we don't want it in there. Joy Reid said,
section.
yeah, Joy Reid said, no, she doesn't want a screened off section. She wants that book to be in there because it's award winning and it tells the story of someone who's LGBT going what their struggle was, and the students may connect to their struggle. So in that context, that book should be available for everybody, not just who you're talking about. So that is the context. If you listen to the rest of the interview, but go ahead. So sorry about that, but that's what
I'm going to
she's
push back on
advocating
you,
for.
David. I'm going to push back. I don't understand. Like 16, it used to be we had a concept that R-rated was the top half of a woman, and something was R-rated, and you had to be 17 to see it. Now it's like you don't have to. And now you have to be 17. We're going to shove it into schools with 16-year-olds. Like and far more graphic than just a topless woman. I don't understand even the concept of saying that 16-year-olds that this is something we should be shoving in their face. If that's something that a parent is an abject failure and says this is what I want to just basically indoctrinate my kids with, all right, that's just society. I can't control it for individual parents, but for school systems to actually be saying this is what we need to be shoving down their throats, literally shoving down the throats of these kids. I'm sorry. At what point do we say? And now it's not 16-year-olds. I mean, this is 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. That's 8, 9, 10-year-olds. There's no limit. There's no limit to the complete deconstruction of any sort of purity of childhood anymore. It's so gross, and to not recognize how this destroys the fabric of a society, you have to be mindless to not realize how completely destructive it is to a child to start feeding them down this road of sexual appetite before they even have hormones for it. It's insane to me. I'm sorry.
Non-consensual pedophilic sexual appetites. That is what they are feeding children. It's not just sexuality. Okay. If we were just talking about, sexually suggestive material that was available to, older kids, older minors, then I would feel a little bit more temperate about it. I would say, okay, you know what, maybe if there was, if it was explicit, if the teachers knew, if the parents knew, and if it was identified as adult reading or reading for older children, okay, maybe I could be a little more patient with this. But where it's graphic depictions of non-consensual sexual activity with a minor, what are you setting these kids up for? You are creating predators. That is what you are doing. Children cannot distinguish between reality. Generally speaking, reality and fantasy is very, very difficult for children to distinguish from. That is why they are able to suspend their disbelief for as long as they are. This is why we always tell and advise our clients, do not involve your children in your marital affairs. Do not involve them in your disputes. They are children. Their brains are developing. They are so sensitive that even if there is no physical harm done to them, the conflict in the home, the yelling enough is psychologically damaging to them at the same level. That is what is known in the law, at least here in the state of Utah. We don't play these games. I don't understand what in the world makes people think that this is any form appropriate, in any form.
Well, let me throw it to Southern Lord. You said like you had something you wanted to say.
Well, of course, I put in the comments, and I appreciated Joe coming off the couch for that rant.
Yeah, Joe came. What the hell is going on?
This is, of course, in my opinion, ridiculous. But I will say that some of these books also are not just headed to a school library, but they're showing up in waiting rooms for kids and things at pediatric offices and stuff. I know that's true. Not necessarily this particular book, but it is an effort to put a certain viewpoint in front of kids that this was an extreme example, Nate, the video you put on. But the thing is, most of the stuff, some of it is so bad, it can't be talked about in public. And it's one of the ways they continue to be able to push it in is because they'll put you in jail potentially if you try and show it or talk about it at a public hearing. They'll tell you to shut up, and if you won't shut up because it's so obscene they can't have it at a public hearing, then they'll have you removed. It's absurd.
They'll have you investigated. You're not just being removed, you're being investigated by the FBI. The FBI doesn't have the time to investigate immigrants who are illegally crossing over our borders, but they do have time to investigate parents who are sticking up for their children and saying, wait a second, what is it that you are teaching my kids? What is it that the school board is doing behind the scenes? Why is this a closed meeting? Why is this not subject to the Public Meetings Act within my jurisdiction? All of that should be easily accessible, and I scared away Joe. Sorry, I'll shut up.
No, he's having connection problems. Go ahead, MLS, because I know you want to jump in here.
No, I came in the middle of a series of choice words that were highly entertaining when I first popped in, with absolutely no context whatsoever. And the question that was posed to me is essentially, is this appropriate to have these words in a book that's in a public school? And I said you need to you need some context, just like the argument was. You do need context. I don't know what the appropriate context would be for a anal strap-on thing, where it would be appropriate in public schools, period, end of story. My only point is that you need to define public schools as opposed to an elementary school versus maybe a high school or something like that. And then we can have a conversation. I can go on and on and on for hours with this debate, because what we're really talking about is a morality issue, and everyone is right and everyone is wrong. And that's the fundamental problem with having a morality debate. So, you talk about a naked statue, talk about a naked woman and a naked man. Okay, now they're touching. At what point does it become pornography and we don't want it in front of the kids? It's a morality thing that we're never going to get an answer around. But when we talk about government putting the books in the schools, right? Because this is a government school, it's not a private school. I think there should be some awareness for age. And I could see an argument that a 16, 17, 18-year-old can maybe have access to this, but anyone younger shouldn't. It's a call that I think if the schools put in that position, that sort of line, I think they'd be fine with. But overall, I don't agree with pushing the victimhood mentality. And that's what it sounds like this book is doing in general. I don't like the idea of pushing the victims are heroes in these books mentality. Just because you're a victim, you're not a hero, or I want to be a hero, therefore I'm going to be a victim. This is a bad road that we've been down for the last 15, 20 years. And in general, I don't want to see books like that out there. And they couch it with the idea like, well, this is just to help someone understand that there's other people that go through it, whatever. No, you're making a victim a hero, and you're creating these fantasy situations. They're not documented situations. And I don't like that in general for any child of any age. That's something that the parents need to be talking about with the kids. So
let me get potentially criminal here, because he unmuted for a second. So I know he was trying to get up in here. Go ahead, Sean.
I mean, like, think about it. I mean, you got C-Spot Run, then you got this. I mean, what's not it's a great reader series. I mean, I will say this much. I remember reading in I think it was like 5th or 6th grade, like The Bluest Eye. And that's got some really. I remember at the time I was like, wow, this is really screwed up, and it's like stuff I'd never experienced before. So, but I also kind of live like in the middle of nowhere in a pretty sheltered existence, so it was a little different for me.
But it's funny because I have to agree with Joe and Danny. Listen, I understand if you're maybe in this advanced, if you're maybe senior year and advanced lit, and then you have to go buy the book for yourself, but that for the school to buy the book and put it in the public in the school library, I think it's a bit much, because I do think you have to have some standards. I don't believe the CP, pedophilia, and all this other stuff that book is graphically describing is appropriate in a public school setting.
What's next? An after-school special about the man in the van with the candy? Like, I don't even understand what the hell. What are they pushing? Why does it have to be pushed by the school? This is so. I'm sorry. I've been going on. I'm sorry.
It's normalization.
Well, I think we've beaten this story to death, but this is essentially blown up because the argument, the left. Now I gotta say the left-leaning argument. The left side's argument is that the Moms for Liberty and the people who advocate about not having this book in are really bigoted toward the LGBTQ plus community and them telling their stories and their experiences from childhood. And this experience that you heard Senator Kennedy throw out there was an experience from someone who's LGBT. So the bigots want to keep it out, and obviously Moms for Liberty are part of the bigots, and those people and your children should be able to hear stories from a diverse community.
Yeah,
That's
but
their
I
argument.
don't understand. The funny thing about it, Nate, though, is if the book was about a 9-year-old girl and this was happening to her, I wouldn't want kids reading that either.
And what is the moral of the story? If you rape a kid, he turns gay? Like, I don't
That's
understand.
exactly my. Yes. Keep going. Sorry,
That's the
I'm
moral?
just saying, like, if you're
That's the moral?
LGBTQ, you don't want this.
Oh, you want to know how kids become gay? Go touch them when they're 7 years old. Like, it's so stupid. And it fights their whole narrative that people are born that way. It's so ridiculous. Everything about this, the only basis to put this in there is because they want people. They want to rip away their purity, because the earlier they can rip away their purity, the more likely they're going to be dysfunctional adults.
Well, and the easier they are to control. I talk about this on my channel all the time, right? Especially in cults. What you try and do is you try and infantilize adults, because the more infantile they are, the less control they have, the less likely they are to make decisions for themselves. And so if you can infantilize them by basically stunting their mental capacity, their mental growth and development in one way or another, then you have control over the decisions they make as adults. They are not fully fledged, functional adult human beings. And that is scary. That's what happens when you destroy a child's innocence. And kids are not always innocent. Kids are little monsters. Okay. I love children though. And to the extent that we can protect them, we must protect them. That is our duty as adults. And to me, it's entirely disturbing. If a book was attached to any sort of movement that I was a part of or community I was a part of, and they said, well, this book represents me, and so if you are against this book, you are bigoted, I wouldn't want any affiliation. I don't think the LGBTQ plus AID people want any affiliation with this either.
The weird part about this whole story is that, like, I understand, like, I think Joy is being disingenuous, because the only thing she's trying to say is because you didn't read the book doesn't mean, but I don't, but as you guys picked up quickly, in what context is this good in any book for public schools? Like, I can't presumably see any context. I am sympathetic to what you're saying in an advanced, 17-year-old, that type of thing. But I do want to make the argument. Number one, if you go to a public school, like, because I can go to my kid's public school, you don't get unfettered access to the internet. The internet is highly. So if you go in and try to go to any site that's not curated there, you can't go on. So it's all censored up on the internet. Matter of fact, you couldn't even look up that book on the internet because it's so censored. So if you already have information censored in public schools, why not just translate it, use that same mentality for the books? But it seems like that's just, but they're saying, no, we want to have the books in there, but we want to censor the internet. So, and nobody's arguing for free the internet. everybody's just arguing we should put whatever books we want inside there. So again, I don't understand why they're doing this, but it is what it is. It's
Except for
this is the
Dr.
hot button
Seuss
issue.
and Huckleberry Finn and, you know, other historical novels that say some naughty words, which everybody was on board with banning until somebody said, hey, wait a second, maybe this isn't such a good idea.
Yeah.
One of the best episodes of South Park is the one where they read Catcher in the Rye and they're waiting for the dirty part. They're like, what? That was just a ruse to get us to read the damn book.
Hey, what's going on? Ian, you came in right at the perfect time. We're about to talk about the internet crazy pastor who, well, you know what? Let me just put the news report on because we've been doing that. And you guys will see this crazy story about how our internet pastor admitted to fleecing his flock because God told him to do it.
Oh, yeah. I love this guy.
Check this out.
A pastor and his wife are facing fraud charges, accused of selling millions in cryptocurrency they claimed was endorsed by God. Investigators say it was actually worthless. Colorado Securities Commission is filing civil fraud charges against Eli and Caitlin Regalado. Investigators say the couple created this cryptocurrency. They called it IndieX Coin. They sold it to members of the Christian community. Claimed God told them investors would become wealthy if they invested. They raised nearly $3.2 million from more than 300 people, but investigators say the crypto was practically worthless.
Now, this is not the end of the story. The pastor, after being, this thing happened, he comes on and he gives essentially tells everyone what really happened. But in this video, it's 1 minute and 55 seconds. You got to listen to a couple of things. Number one, he admits to everything. He says yes, and listen to how they spent the money because he's going to admit how God told him to spend the money.
Caitlin and I are being charged in a civil charge from the Colorado Securities and Exchange Commission for basically selling millions of dollars worth of cryptocurrency that is deemed worthless by the state. Now, the reason that they're saying that it's worthless is because there is no exit for people who have bought. The exchange technology failed, things went downhill. And from that point forward, we've just been waiting on the Lord literally for a miracle. So the charges are that Caitlin and I pocketed $1.3 million. And I just want to come out and say that those charges are true. So there's been $1.3 million that's been taken out of, I think it was a total of $3.4 million. But out of that 1.3, $500,000 went to the IRS and a few $100,000 went to a home remodel that the Lord told us to do. So how this whole thing started is the Lord told us in 21 to walk away from our marketing company. And he said, I'm going to do a new thing. And then he took us into this cryptocurrency. It was a different cryptocurrency other than index coin at the time. Well, that cryptocurrency turned out to be a scam. And so the Lord says, give that to them, but also give them a 10x. And I'm like, well, where's this liquidity going to come from? And the Lord says, trust me. Well, as money is coming in, we would be sowing it. And at first it was hundreds of dollars and thousands of dollars, then tens of thousands of dollars. Money would come in, we tithe, we sow, more money would come in. And so we were just always under the impression that God was going to provide, that the source was never ending, that God was doing a new thing, and that we had nothing to worry about. And we sold a cryptocurrency with no clear exit. We did. We took God at his word and sold a cryptocurrency with no clear exit. And so the prosecutors have to take that and say, these people willingly sold cryptocurrency with no clear exit. What we're praying for and what we're believing for still is that God is going to do a miracle. God is going to work a miracle in the financial sector. Caitlin and I.
So he's stolen all their money, and it was the good Lord who told him to do it. Danny.
Hey, Nate, I just want to come out and say something.
Go ahead, Ian.
I believe this guy. God has come to me before and says, I need a home remodel, especially my kitchen. It's very in need of service. So I'm thinking about doing the same thing and just using God as an excuse.
Well, I sense there's going to be some skepticism. So let me say that I think the Lord has been directing me to remodel a house too, but he's been doing it by speaking through my wife.
Joe, don't you take your financial advice from God?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, well. God, somehow I don't have that direct communication. He doesn't like whisper it to me. Although I should point out that, a lot of people who join my channel are called followers, and it started this whole myth that it's a cult, but it's really not at all a cult type of cult. So So no
If you
one.
guys
should
want a
think-
cult kind of cult, come check out my channel instead.
Yeah, yeah.
for dating.
Mine is not at all a cult type of cult. There's no Kool-Aid, no spaceships, no self-harm, no harming others, no squirrel mutilation, no goat sacrifices, no throwing virgins into volcanoes, no smearing blood on the walls. It's like the least culty type of cult you ever seen.
Leave it to Beaver starting a cult.
Yeah.
Beaver starting a cult.
Here's what's sad is if this guy had just led with the defense of, yes, God told me to do this, and got his followers to invest in just him saying God wants me to do XYZ thing, he wouldn't be in trouble here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
True. It's
Yeah,
but he used the crypto. Good point, Danny.
It's the crypto aspect is what's giving them the hook for the civil lawsuit through the SEC, through the Colorado's SEC. Had they just instead kept their mouth shut, well, not kept their mouth shut, but praised Jesus and said, "Oh Lord," had they come out and given a great sermon, like one of those really good, like Southern Baptist sermons, right? Like sweating, thumping that Bible, had they come out that way and said, "Listen, if you seek a blessing from God, God will bless you." Right? Your problem is that you are not seeking enough harvest. As a matter of fact, I am here to harvest. I am here to glean those fields. And you, if you truly believe in Jesus, you will donate to me directly. You will make this dream happen. This is not my dream. This is the Lord's dream. Right? So like if he had done
Where can
that
I contribute?
instead, Dani Ahn Direct, that's my hashtag. You can find me on Cash App. You can find me anywhere else. But like that would have all been protected and none of it would have gone to the IRS either. So this guy is an idiot on multiple levels.
But you know what? I want to ask though. Because the pitch that he gave his followers is still up on YouTube, and the pitch was, "I'm going to make God wants us all to be rich. So invest in this crypto, and not only will I make money, God wants you to make money by investing." So it's a little different than, hey, I'm just So it's like, hey, this is the way God has told us to make all this money. And really, to be fair, he, the money, it was worthless. He was just selling them worthless stuff and then, pocketing the money. So I don't know. I think this guy fleeced his flock, and I think he should honestly go to jail because does anybody know how the crypto thing works? Because I'm assuming,
Yes.
Ian, do you? So what exactly happened here? He set up a crypto and.
So in order for a crypto to be treated as a security, which is what the SEC is treating it as in Colorado, they kind of flip back and forth. The FTC and SEC still haven't decided whether or not it's a commodity or a security, because the whole concept of a security is that it's a vehicle for an exchange of value. So if you can't exchange it, then it's not a vehicle. You're just buying nothing at that point. And so they're saying, wait a second, you're selling this as a security. You're selling it as something you could trade. You're selling it. That's where you're getting your bargain, right? You're saying, okay, it's worth X number of dollars. But if you go and put it on an exchange, then it will increase in its value. And as it increases in its value, you can then trade it, sell it, and then you get whatever the remainder is. I don't know why I'm echoey.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Joe.
Has any court determined that crypto is a securities yet? Because I thought that was up in the air.
There's some
It's still
splits
up in
on
the
that.
air.
It's still in a
Some cryptos like Ripple was a big one. The SEC tried to claim it was a security, and after a couple of years, just this past fall, the Southern District of New York said, "No, this is not a security." So it freed it up, but in the meantime, it had been dormant for so long; it's pretty much been crippled. But there's other ones where other coins and other cryptos being attacked, so it's not clear yet.
I mean, personally, in my opinion, FTC has jurisdiction over this. To me, this is more of a commodity than it is a security. There's something tangible that comes out of true cryptos, right? I'm not talking about like other cryptos, other
Like
forms
this
of
one.
crypto
Not
that
this
are
one, but
fraudulent.
normal crypto.
But normal crypto that's a result of, blockchain transactions, specifically, you're thinking like Bitcoin, those other kind of stable coins, secure coins, those have a ledger. They have a digitized ledger. You have a record. It functions less as a security and frankly, more as a form of exchange, more of a form of money. So
I was
go
going
ahead,
to
Ian.
ask a question less about the crypto side of it and more about the fraud allegations. And I don't exactly know what's been alleged, but is it, he comes out and it's kind of funny what he admits, but at the same time, he doesn't come out and say he had an intent to defraud. He doesn't say, he basically says, I did this. Yes, I have a home remodel. I have all these different things, but it was because God told me to. So I was following my God's, plan. Is there any thought, guys out there, that maybe it's a negligent misrepresentation, it's some other cause of action that ultimately he'll be found liable for civilly? Or do you think that they can see through it? There's evidence of intent to defraud.
Maybe that's why they're on these civil charges.
Yeah, I was going to say there's civil charges, so negligence is this. I mean, the minimal standard there, and it sounds like just based on his own statements, he was at a minimum negligent. He sold these without a way out or a way to cash out or whatever he said. He basically admitted to negligence, at the very least. So they're going to get him on that. I don't know if they have enough with his statements alone. This is why you never talk people, though. By the way.
Yeah, but I think don't forget he's got people they're funding his lifestyle. So you got charges, they're screaming fraud. So he's got to come out and tell people like, hey, no matter what you heard, now you're going to hear it from me. And I think it was a genius move to say, hey, I did this. I took the one because all those it's a paper. It's all paper. So it's just there. Like I got the money. Yeah, I did it. God told us to remodel the house, even though I don't know who believes that.
I like how he says, "Hey, the Fed's got $500,000 of it, though."
Yeah,
they got some of
how
his
he
money.
admitted to more than the Feds allege. They alleged $3.2 million scam, and he said, "I think it was something like 3.4 or something like that."
Yeah. Hey, I'm just noticing. I've been covering the Jennifer Crumley trial, and I thought I was going to get more of a break to pop in on here, but my court's back, so I gotta jump off.
All right, MLS. Listen, thank you for definitely dropping by for these crazy cases, bro.
All right, take care, guys.
Later, guys. Let me
Hey, Nate the lawyer. This isn't the first case that's like this, by the way. A similar case is Joseph Smith, who was actually indicted on fraud charges way back in the day when he created his own bank. If you guys are interested, you should go and look up that case as well. But the intent there was very similar, which is,
It's
the Joseph Smith.
The Joseph Smith, like 1820s Joseph Smith.
Oh wow, King of Mormon.
Yes. So the whole concept is we'll all invest and we'll all have something to come out of it. It will benefit all of Zion collectively. And this kind of collective financial venture continued. And that's part of the reason why the LDS Church has more than $100 billion in liquid assets today.
Woo! That's good money.
Yep.
Here is Philip. Philip says a perfect example of this is from when we were talking about the books in school. Mark Twain's quote about arguing with idiots. Joy Reid is one of the worst MSM pundits. Yeah, she is pretty bad. She's pretty bad. And that whole thing about because you don't know the main character of the book, but you could describe everything in the book. I don't know. I don't know where she was going with that, but yeah. The hell I got. Everybody check it out. Please make sure you're subbed. And YouTube doesn't like black lawyers. Well, I don't think Eric. This is Eric's channel, so I don't think he's a black lawyer. But if you're in sub, check just to make sure. Thanks for the $5 super chat. And here's a $10 super chat. Sure. When did schools have an 18+ section? And I think this was going back to what you were saying, Joe, about rated R, 17 and up. If we allow this, do we allow erotic literature as well? Don't tell me those passages were less explicit than soccer mom smut. Interesting. So it seems like we touched the nerve with the whole book banning issue. Ian, you missed the book banning stuff, which was crazy.
You missed the best part, Ian. We should go back and review it just for you.
All right. So the next story that is on our menu of craziness is the Alabama has just executed someone for the first time with nitrogen gas. Now, the people who were there said that this execution was horrific. They said it was a horrific execution. Now, just some background on the story before we get into it. The guy, he was a hitman, killed a woman, convicted in like the 80s. They had actually tried to execute him before, but was unsuccessful. So he survived the first execution by lethal injection. So the state was like, well, we've tried to execute this guy before. It didn't work. So he actually went to court and said, hey, they tried before, they failed. So, how many times are we going to do this? Then he opted out of lethal injection and opted into this nitrogen gas. but then said it was cruel and unusual. And the Alabama Supreme Court said, no, it's not cruel and unusual. And since you opted into it, you said you wanted to do it, we're going to do it that way. So he has now been executed. And the argument now is this cruel and unusual punishment? Don't forget, we went from the electric chair because people were saying that was cruel, to the firing squad, which is still on the books in some states, to now nitrogen gas. And the other argument is, how many times can the government attempt to kill someone before they lose that right to kill you? Because we know the government's totally inefficient. So when do they lose the right to try to kill you, especially if they've tried multiple times in the past?
What an indictment of the government that you're so bad at anything that you do, you can't even figure out how to use whatever chemical concoction you want and how to kill someone. That's just, I don't know, some fentanyl. Like how hard can it be? How hard can it be? I don't even get it.
Well, his first execution failed because they were trying to put the needles in, and I think they didn't put it in the vein, so it all kind of it didn't go into his system the way it's supposed to. So he survived, and then they tried again, and I think they tried for almost like an hour to kill him, but they couldn't kill him. So it's
like at a certain point you just pull out a hammer and hit him over the head.
But this also goes into whether state-sanctioned killings like this, if you can't do it humanely, then should they be done at all?
Well, did they describe in what way it was horrific? Because my understanding is that with the gas, you put it over through the mask, someone falls asleep pretty instantaneously or within a minute, and then they slowly suffocate to death.
Yeah,
there were claims he was his head was moving around, and he was trying to hold his breath and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna play here is the report from in the death chamber.
The flow of nitrogen gas, Kenneth Smith laid on the following the flow of nitrogen gas, Kenneth Smith laid on the gurney and shook for about 2 minutes, shaking and writhing on that gurney. The gurney did move several times there. Following that shaking on the gurney, there were several minutes, about between 5 and 7 minutes, according to media witnesses, of heavy breathing on the gurney. Several minutes later, a correctional officer did walk up to Kenneth Smith and appear to look over at his face. He did not touch Kenneth Smith or actually do anything that media witnesses were able to see to Kenneth Smith, but he did lean over and look at him for several minutes before walking back to the wall to return to his post there. At about 8:08, movement appeared to stop, and there was no perceptible breathing from Kenneth Smith. The curtains to the execution viewing room closed at 8:15 p.m. Central Time, and Governor Ivey pronounced death at 8:25 Central Time. One thing that Kenneth Smith's attorneys were very afraid of is that he might vomit into the mask. He did not show any signs of vomiting there into the mask. Also, the Alabama Attorney General's office had said in prior court filings that they expected him to lose consciousness pretty quickly after that gas began to flow, but media witnesses saw that Kenneth Smith appeared to be conscious for several minutes after that gas began to flow, again, before he proceeded to shake and writhe on that gurney for about 2 minutes. Again, that 2 minutes of shaking and writhing on the gurney was followed by about 5 to 7 minutes of heavy breathing.
So he was passed out by the time he was shaking.
But they said he was awake during the shaking and driving. He passed out.
They actually don't know that.
What is that what she said? They were like he was
Well,
awake.
they could say it looks like that, but that could have been like agonal breathe, like your body responding. I mean, fine, let's go back to hangings. That's easier. Look,
we have
can't do
firing
it.
squad in our state.
We'll go back to the way that always works.
I got a question. Do we know anything about pain, the feeling of pain? Because I seem to recall that you can't cause unnecessary pain and suffering. Do we know anything about that?
No, I don't know if this is.
I mean, writhing seems to be something, but writhing can also not be pain. So if you're evaluated on an Eighth Amendment standard, this could be entirely consistent. The other issue is, why are we moving to this form of death penalty of method? Is this
come to find out? Well, there are two reasons. One, the medications that are used for lethal injection, companies have stopped making them because they're used for lethal injections, particularly, so they stop making them.
They also won't sell to state governments.
And they won't sell to state governments because they're using them for that. And then a second reason is that lethal injections are really inefficient and they fail a lot. Like, for instance, there are about 3 people in the state of Alabama who lethal injections have failed for various reasons. They can't get the thing in the right thing or whatever. So they were looking for something to be more finalized. Like, this person, this is the second go round, we're being killed by the state. Like Joe was saying, how bad is the state where they can't even kill someone? So they're looking for a more efficient way to do it. And this was one of the things that the doctor said would do it.
To your second point, though, Nate, which is how often or how many times does the state get a shot to kill someone? In my opinion, if they've put in a needle, if they've injected with chemicals, if they've hung someone, if they're declared dead and then they come back to life, that's divine providence. You let them go. At that point, they're not even guilty. Just let them go.
Definitely, right?
But that's after a successful execution. So, I mean, once you start the process, though, because you're saying, well, they couldn't find a vein and that was an unsuccessful attempt. Is that torturous psychologically? Yeah. But is that torturous physically, which is what I think our framers had envisioned? Then no.
Well, someone's laying on a gurney for about an hour and I'm trying to stab you and kill you, and then like, oh, we didn't do it this time. We'll do this again next week or whatever. I think that's
you go to the hospital for surgery, that can happen too. So
yeah,
I don't know.
That's the exact same kind of problem.
I bet the French guillotine has at least a 90% success rate. That's just my guess.
You got to sharpen the blade.
Sharpen the blade. Well, so now let's move to our next topic of, unfortunately, the migrant crisis. Now, I know. People are like, the migrant crisis. So the big issue that's coming up on Capitol Hill now is who's going to fund this crisis. Now, obviously, Republicans want border security, close the border. Let's just do it that way. Where Democrats are saying, since we caused, this is AOC, I should say, they're saying that we caused the migrant crisis by doing things like putting sanctions on places like Venezuela, who has a strong man who's running the state. So they're saying that that we're responsible. We should take these people in. But now, since Texas has been sending people to the sanctuary cities, they now are, have these states of emergency. So I want to, because a lot of people would say, well, it's wrong that Texas and Arizona and these other border states have been sending migrants to these two sanctuary states. But one thing I think people leave out is that the sanctuary cities actually asked for these people to come. So I'm going to play you a clip of literally the governor of New York addressing the migrant crisis before they started getting migrants, where she's going to literally be begging people, begging for migrants to come to New York State.
To a teeming shore. And that statement encapsulates our values. We want people to come here, despite where they came from, or despite the circumstances that drove them to this country, into this state. We say you are welcome here. We are welcome with open arms, and we'll work to keep you safe. We'll not only house you, but we'll protect you. And the richness of the culture and the diversity and the food and the restaurants that we know are going to be coming because of these efforts are beyond measure. It's an extraordinary part of our story, and it's woven into the story of New York, and it makes us more vibrant. I'm from Buffalo's. The infusion of refugees from around the world has really made this community a place I grew up, a steel town. A lot of people left because they couldn't find jobs for a long time. It was the refugees from around the world that have made it such an incredibly fascinating community again. Same with New York City, same with Albany, same with Syracuse and Rochester. So our message to the world is, send us your people, send us those who need the cloak of comfort that we can demonstrate as New Yorkers with big hearts and open arms, and we'll provide a safe haven.
Lady Liberty sits in.
So now, things have changed, obviously, and things have changed to where they're saying we don't want migrants to come to New York. The governor has now changed and said we don't want migrants to come because of the crisis.
Our shores aren't teeming anymore.
But the
Hey,
two
Nate.
issues that we're going to talk about is
Hey, Nate.
go ahead.
Nate, real quick. I gotta step out, so I'll see you guys later.
All right,
Later,
Sean.
brother.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for stopping by. So the two issues that we have is that New York and Chicago are essentially closing their borders. They have passed laws to stop migrant buses from coming into both New York and Chicago, while also blaming Chicago's governor for sending them migrants, even though, as you can see, they were asking for migrants. So the bus companies have now sued because they were impounding buses and arresting drivers who brought migrants. So the bus companies are suing on constitutional grounds. The bus companies are saying, one, that the city of Chicago and the city of New York are essentially doing immigration reform by closing their own borders. This is also a violation of the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause, because you have free passage within the United States. And if they're only targeting, which the laws are, only targeting migrant buses, then they're treating migrants, or they're treating people differently on the basis of race, religion, creed, and national origin. So that should also be illegal. And then they're also saying that if this is a commerce issue and that the federal government is in charge of commerce, and that these laws are affecting commerce. So
interstate commerce.
Yeah,
and I will
interstate
point
commerce.
out on that last point, I will point out that the federal government, in its abject and insatiable hunger for power, tries to interpret anything as interstate commerce. I mean anything. And
agreed.
I just want to express to you all the extent to which they go on this, because I was shocked when I was covering the thing that shocked me more than anything when I was covering the Maxwell trial was that it's a violation of the Mann Act if you use any product that crossed state lines in the process of engaging in sex with a minor, which means that because the massage table came from a different state, which I guess in theory, a bottle of wine, anything that all of a sudden the federal power has, we consider that interstate commerce, and that you can be charged federally for a crime which otherwise would be restricted to state act, to exclusive state power. So that's how far the federal government has gone, and has been recognized by the Supreme Court that they actually have that authority. That's the broad grant of jurisdiction that they have, which is astonishing. I mean, there's no state power anymore.
Well, the Civil Rights Act. The Civil Rights Act is a commerce clause, and the dormant. And I know we've all gone to law school. The dormant commerce clause, where even if you don't, even if the government doesn't, it's dormant. So you know. Yeah. So it's an extreme. Matter of fact, Obamacare is under the commerce clause. So you know this is where the government. But do you think the bus companies have an argument here where this is interfering in interstate commerce, and or one of the other issues that they brought up?
Nate, I got a quick question. I didn't read the article. What are the damages they're alleging?
Well, the damages are that their buses are being impounded, they're being fined, and their bus drivers are being arrested. So they're saying that by having these ordinances that essentially ban migrant buses, because they're not banning all buses, particularly migrant buses from Texas to going into there, it's violating both the Equal Protection Clause by saying immigrants aren't welcome, and it's also violating the Interstate Commerce Clause.
I mean, the Democrats are right about something. It is the Fed's fault. I mean, it is the Fed's fault. This is symptomatic of a broken immigration system that's broken only because the Feds refuse to take any responsibility for immigration. They've shoved all of that responsibility onto federal agencies who change their laws, change their rules quite frequently, to the degree that the immigrants who are trying to comply with the law don't know how to comply with the law. They're the ones who are being most disadvantaged by this fight, because what's happening is you have federal agents basically creating an entrapment scenario, which they're prone to do. I mean, I set up fake schools to give out visas to say, here, you can come and attend our fake school and you're not breaking the law if you decide to work at the same time. So this is symptomatic of an extremely broken immigration system. Our Congress needs to take the blame for this. They need to be held accountable and be told, look, if you're determining how many visas are going to be given out in a given year, what your policies are going to be moving forward, you can't keep placing this. If we don't want to see this happen again, an answer is a border wall. Obviously, we have the right to secure our own sovereignty. We have the right to defend ourselves, and so does the state of Texas. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a non-issue. That's a non-starter. But if you want to actually see change here, substantive change that's fair for everyone, immigrants do have one right underneath the Constitution, and that is procedural due process. Make the procedure fair, make it clear to those who are coming here what to expect. Because if you think that you can cross over a river and you are very, very desperate and you are running from desperate circumstances, but as long as I get across the river, I'm golden, I have a chance, I can stay there, I have a chance to live there, you're going to take the risk. But if you see Texas agents on the other side saying, nope, you can't cross here, it is dangerous and we will not get you, you need to cross over there, it's an easy answer. You go and you cross where it's safe, where it's accessible. And you don't go and you don't flood the border unless you believe logistically that it will pan out for you at the end of the day. The Democrats and Republicans are creating a slave class in the United States. They do not want citizens here. They want green card holders. They don't want them to vote. They just want bodies to boost their own jurisdictions. That's it. That is it. They don't want you to have rights. The people who are coming here to the border are the ultimate victims right now of this bad policy and these policy fights. Well, I shouldn't say ultimate victims. We are, right? The U.S. and the people that the U.S. protect worldwide, internationally, are the victims of bad policy in this case. If we can't secure our own security at our own borders, then do we even have a country? That's a good question to be asking. So,
I don't even think they don't want us to have green card holders either. But I'm going to go back to this particular case. And what troubles me right now is the standing issue. I mean, arguably, these bus companies are contracting with a state entity or some sort of corporation. And so if I was the bus company and my drivers were being arrested and impounded, my first remedy is with the person that contracted with me. I'm sure there's an indemnity agreement. I'm sure there's some sort of agreement between the two. And so as a result, I'd say, listen, I'm charging you my damages. I almost think I don't know who the employer or the hirer is of these bus companies, but I think they have better standing to make this lawsuit than do the bus companies themselves, unless the bus companies are just volunteering their services or something similar.
But what about the issue because this is in the criminal arena too? Because a lot of they're passing essentially criminal ordinances. So you wouldn't be able to indemnify someone for a criminal. That's why some of the bus drivers are getting arrested.
Well, you mentioned damages being drivers that can't work. They have to bring other drivers in. It doesn't necessarily mean just because they're criminal ordinances, there's not some sort of civil damage. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't know that the remedy is with the bus companies. I think it's somewhere else. Yeah.
Well, so I wanted to ask you guys, this week we had the SCOTUS decision with respect to the Fifth Circuit injunction on the federal government. So those of you who are not familiar with this story, Texas has sued the United States and they got an injunction to stop the United States from ripping down the barbed wire that Texas had put up along a certain section of called Eagle Pass, and that the federal government wanted to come in there and take it down. The state of Texas sued the federal government. District court granted an injunction saying, federal government, you can't take it down. The Fifth Circuit agreed with the district court and said that they're going to uphold the injunction. And then the Supreme Court this week said that we're tearing down the injunction. Now, when you want to understand what it means, that doesn't mean the case is over. And theoretically, Texas can ultimately win. Although by the time they win, they'll probably be after. If they were to win, the length of litigation will probably be after the next election. So really, this TRO, this injunction is
preliminary injunction.
Yeah, it's pretty important in that it's probably going to last into at least the next time a president is sworn in, whoever that is. So, but the interesting thing is the response from Texas has been basically, F you. We're not. That's what. And not only did they do that, not only did Governor Abbott say, okay, you can tear it down. We're just going to put it back up again. And we'll put it back up again. And we'll put it back up again. You have the power to come in here. We're going to put up. And now they're bringing in the Texas Guard. And it looks like we really could be having a standoff. And it gets even more serious because what Texas is has found or is staking their position in a legal justification of Article 1, Section 10, subsection 3, which basically says that in cases of invasion, a state has a right to defend itself. Normally, when it comes to issue, the Constitution is pretty clear, and this is probably why Justice Roberts and Chief Justice Roberts and Barrett joined in with the left in saying we're going to grant power to the federal government. They happen to be institutionalists who are going to favor federal government power in general, and there's a lot of basis to say the federal government has exclusive domain over issues
Supremacy Clause
of it's the supremacy clause with respect to protecting our nation, so that's their job, to protect our nation. But Texas's response has been, well, look, under Section 3 of subsection 10 Section 10 of Article 1, we have the right to protect ourselves from invasion. And under Section 4, the government has a duty to protect us, and they're not. So they're saying that we now have a constitutional right to step in here and take whatever step we want. And 25 states have signed a letter of support, as you're pulling up here, saying we stand with Texas, that they have a right to protect themselves and that this is an invasion. Well, if it is an invasion, if it really is an invasion, in that case, perhaps New York can say, now we're being invaded. So we don't have to worry. So we can do what we need to do in order to protect ourselves. This whole thing is such a clusterfuck of a mess. And for those people on the left who are saying, how dare you intercede with federal government handling of immigration? Well, in that case, every sanctuary city we've ever seen has been interceding with federal government and saying, we don't care what the federal government wants. We're gonna welcome these people in here. So clearly, it hasn't been treated as if it's the exclusive purview of the federal government. So there's a growing practical civil war that's happening here. We have literally half the country is in support of Texas, and then the other half seems to be in support of the federal government. And it's interesting to see how this could play out. That New York, even though they don't stand with Texas on this issue, really, from a logistical legal perspective, they would be enhanced and strengthened if they said, yeah, we're being invaded. We're being invaded, and we can do whatever we want to invade ourselves. And that, therefore, for the Article 14, the 14th Amendment shouldn't apply to us. And that's my thoughts on it. But I really would love to hear from you guys as to what you guys think about the interesting twist of positions here between each of these states, like New York having to go back and forth, and the legitimacy of Texas's position that this is an invasion, and accordingly that they have the power to do what they want to do. What are your thoughts?
Let me get Steve from Southern Law in here. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, we've had this immigration problem, at least since I've been aware of how the world works, at least, since I turned into an adult, right? And you hoped that something would be worked out decades ago that would be responsible for the people who were coming here to work, who back then at least were largely trying to help their families and stuff like that, the companies that wanted them, the practical reality they were being here, and it's just a political football. And that's how it's always been treated. These people have been pawns, and our citizens have been pawns. But what's going on right now is so unprecedented. The people are being incentivized to come here in such numbers and in such a way that they know when they get here, this system isn't functional. They say these code words, I'm a refugee, I'm seeking asylum or whatever, and I'm given this court date that's infinitely in the future. They're given benefits, and then they can work for cash, and who can blame them for that? So you're also teaching them that paying taxes is for suckers. In every way, you're telling people this country is lawless and it is here to be abused. And, that's a shame, because you're going to get a lot of bad actors come across the border, already have, right? And you'll also get a lot of desperate people. And are we really prepared for, well, we aren't, for the infrastructure it would take to even take care of these people, much less assimilate them in responsibly into societies. And you look at like a city like New York, overwhelmed by such a small portion of the population of people coming over the border that they're crying about it. Chicago and stuff like that. It's qualitatively, in addition to quantitatively, different, I feel, than it ever has been in the past. It is right now. It is a spectacular failure. Nobody would be talking about the Constitution in the context that they are now if Biden were just presiding over an ordinary border failure like they have for years. And they're trying to tweak it back into that. Oh, well, if we came up with a bill and an agreement, we could cure this. No, there was nothing that caused it to be this way that wasn't intentional, right? They intentionally
6 million
created
in 3
this.
years. 6
Yeah.
million in 3 years, 18,000 in 2 weeks. That's double the size of the actual city of Eagle Pass. And I have a question for you guys real quick, and then I'm going to shut up. What was the constitutional basis for shutting down the borders for Hawaii and Alaska during COVID when they implemented their quarantine structure and said you must quarantine for 2 weeks and we have the right to arrest you if you come in from another state? How was that not an interference on interstate commerce? I'm just curious what your guys' thoughts are on that and how you circle that square.
I think they from a legal argument, I think they would try to circle that square because they always fall back on public safety, which is the fascist general cry of public safety, right? I mean, it is. It's always public safety. But I mean, that's what they say, right? I mean,
But is this not public safety then?
rules? What?
Well,
Is this not public safety then? What Texas is doing?
No, because the argument is that the federal government's argument is that we control international borders. We are the sovereign, right? You're the sovereign of the state. We are the sovereign, and we decide. And this goes back to I don't know if you remember the Arizona case with Obama when Arizona passed those laws saying we're going to deport people, and the Supreme Court came and said no, the federal government when it comes to immigration is supreme. The supremacy clause. Those laws are no good, and I think that's kind of what they're running up to now.
See.
But I think I think if we really want to talk about this issue particularly, it's the remember under Trump there was what's known as first this has just became a left versus right issue. Obama deported more people than any other president in history. He was literally known as the deporter in chief. Like literally, they hated him in Mexico for deporting so many people. So it became political after Trump. Trump said, "I'm going to do what Obama did," and guess what? Now Trump is the racist. So that's essentially what happened. But under Trump, we had the Remain in Mexico policy. Now the policy is that if you were coming from a country like Venezuela, and you made it to a country that for sanctuary, you made it to, let's say, Mexico. You're not, there's nobody trying to kill you in Mexico. Then you had to apply for asylum, but you had to stay in Mexico. You had to stay in Mexico and apply for asylum. And so, you weren't coming here. But that was under a COVID rule, because in the COVID, they were like, we're going to have everybody remain in Mexico. Then Biden relaxed that rule and said, okay, that rule is going to end. So now we're going to allow people, if they make it across the border into the United States, they can now apply for asylum here and stay here. So then you got millions of people saying, hey, if we just make it. So now you don't even have to cross the rivers and all that stuff. If you can go through a port of entry, say, I'm here for asylum, like they said, and they'll have to not only let you in, but then you go to wherever you want. So now that's what Texas is saying. Even the policy is ridiculous, but so what, we're putting up razor wire. They don't have to cross the razor wire. They can come right through a port of entry and say, we want asylum. Go ahead, Ian.
I was just going to mention, just taking it back to this actual Supreme Court case, because I think it's important to spend some time with this. Back when I was a law clerk for a federal judges oftentimes want to punt it back to the legislator. They want to make people who are actually responsible for governing people actually do work. And I'm not me, I'm a conservative, and I like a lot of your opinions. But this is one of those situations where I think the Supreme Court has stepped in and said, you suckers, listen, we're not going to fight this thing. The federal government controls the international borders. And I know there's a dispute, and I know there's an argument that states should be able to protect against invasion, against a lot of different things. But I think what's going to end up happening in this case, regardless of the election or not, is the Supreme Court's going to err on the side of the federal government. And what they're going to do is they're going to say, Congress, step in, do your job. If you do not like the current situation, you will have to get past these laws. And if you don't pass these laws, us constituents are not going to vote for you. We're not going to stand it. So I really do think it must have been super hard for them to sign this opinion, because it does look like, you're allowing the border guard to cut the Texas wire, and they're just trying to protect their people. But actually, they were doing us a favor. They were arguing in favor of our current separation of powers, and they were saying, listen, please, we're not going to do this. We're going to be called upon to do this in some other areas, but we're going to hold strong on this, and we're going to say, listen, federal government, do your job and pass those laws that change the border policies. So that's my opinion. I know it's kind of a little bit higher up Most people, hate the Supreme Court now because of this dumb thing. But I think they were just doing their job.
Can I ask you a question then, Ian?
Yeah.
How does that square with 4.4? So Article 4, Section 4, where it says that the government, federal government specifically, if that's the government we're talking about, they have jurisdiction. That's what the Supreme Court held. They still have an affirmative duty to protect their people. No.
The Border Patrol or
no. The federal government. Do they not
Okay.
have an affirmative
Sure.
duty to secure our borders?
Sure.
Well,
So if they're not doing that, I mean,
No. What they're
Answer that question.
saying is they want to cut the wire and sometimes move it, not
Yeah.
dispose of it, because they want to save people's lives. They want to be able to access people that are coming across the border. So the federal government is saying, actually, you know what? We're doing more to save lives, whether they be migrant or citizen lives, by having this process in place.
but the injunction already allowed for that. The injunction was very specific. It said if someone's life is at risk or in danger, that they're authorized to cut the wire to access people. So I guess that's where I'm confused. If that's, I don't know. I hope you're right. I hope that this is just signaling saying, hey, legislature, go do your job, right? Because I came in on this topic really hot because that's my frustration with this whole case. But I don't know.
I actually agree with you. I think we're all the border is completely jacked up. There's no question about it. But when it comes to technical specifics,
Right,
sometimes I think they have to err on the side of a technicality because they really want someone to do something, and they don't want to be the people who do it.
We need 100 Fettermans. We need 100 Fettermans.
Ian, I will agree with you that I think that Texas's likelihood of success in this case are slim. But that doesn't mean that I think that that doesn't mean I'm saying I agree with you that it should be or that that's justifiable. I look at the Supreme Court as if it's broken into 3 sections, not the 2 that the left pretends it is. You have the 3 on the left, you have 3 on the right in Gorsuch and Alito and Thomas, and then the 3 in the middle of Kavanaugh, Roberts, and Barrett, that they tend to be very strong institutionalists and upholding the establishment. And this is a classic establishment type of thing, give power to the federal government. And that's why I think that ultimately they will side with the federal government in this, because traditionally this has been exclusively federal domain. So I think that they're going to say that's the way we've always done it, and that's the way it's going to be. But I do have the question that I think that really needs to be answered is, who has the authority to declare invasion? There seems to be now, there's a dispute between the federal government and the states as to whether or not the state has the authority to say we're being invaded, because the federal government clearly doesn't think that they are. That's why they're saying you don't have the power to protect yourself. And Texas is clearly saying they officially declared this an invasion. So who has that authority? Who do you guys think should have the authority under the Constitution?
The state has the authority. There's no question about it. You got to look at this very technically. And that is, I don't even think the Supreme Court minds that Texas keeps putting up the razor wire. That's not the issue. It was a technical issue about cutting and or moving to assist other people. So I don't even think it's that big of a battle with the Supreme Court's order. So I would be a person that would say, yes, Texas, continue to put your razor wire up there, protect your population, protect your borders. But you're going to understand that the federal government actually has ultimate authority, and you can't sue them for trespass because they have to access through it to be able to access some potential illegal immigrants.
Yeah,
but if that's the argument, then the argument is moot because, like I said, that's already allowed for in the injunction. So then why does the Supreme Court feel the need to get rid of the injunction? That's what I'm saying. If it's already allowing for the feds to access people in the injunction, in the very specific injunction issued by the Fifth Circuit Court in anticipation of argument on the 7th, then why the hell is the Supreme Court coming in and using that as their hook? I think your other argument is more clear, and I think is what the court ultimately relied on, was a jurisdictional issue. Who has ultimate jurisdiction over our borders and border policy making? It's a federal issue. Leave it to the feds. Let them decide how they're going to do it. I think
you probably should look at the actual injunction. I'm not sold that is the case. Otherwise, the Supreme Court wouldn't have ruled the way it did. I think the federal power want more power to access the immigrants, not just in an emergency situation. They want to contact them, question them, potentially ask if they're asylum seekers.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
In fact, I think Texas actually offered to say that for medical emergencies, we'll allow the federal government in. but otherwise they won't. And the federal government was dissatisfied with that limited access, and they said, no, we need to have greater
Full
control
access.
over this area. So, and that's really where the heart of the fight was, because Texas was willing to give them that, hey, if there's a medical emergency, you want to come in here. And then, everyone keeps, by the way, I just want to point out, there's a factual, intentional misdirection, which the federal government and the left have been promoting, which they tell a story of a woman and 2 kids who drowned, but apparently they drowned deep on the Mexico side. They didn't drown by the barbed wire. So, but everyone says, oh, what about that woman and the 2 kids? And they try to bring that up, but that's just I think that's gaslighting, because from what I've read, that they were very clearly on the Mexico side of the Rio Grande.
And even be fair, if they just went through a regular port of entry and just claimed asylum, they would be okay. Just go through literally, you go through an interview and you can come in.
Correct.
So them going, the razor wire is kind of like funneling people onto a regular port of entry, because it's not about whether these people can get in or not, because under the policy now, they can just say the magic word. So, I don't understand the left's argument.
Which
here,
that
but
too, by the
it
way,
is.
is very aggravating, because the
Oh,
term
yeah.
asylum is supposed to be limited to very limited circumstances. Not that just someone says asylum, but there are very strict rules as to how the rules of asylum work. You have to be someone who's like persecuted, in danger. It's not someone who's just looking for economic benefits and they want to enjoy the golden streets of America.
And
But
Joe, I
it's-
got a
due process argument, though. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Ian, I'm
there
sorry.
is due process. Joe, I got a question for you, and this is really, and I just want to know the answer to it. So, is the remedy then to have them remain in Mexico or wait outside pending the resolution of their asylum request? If it is, that's great. What the federal government seems to do is, listen, because they're being threatened, because there's a potential that they're being threatened by their home country, they need to stay in some place that's safe. What is your thought on that?
But
Mexico,
first
but
of
they're
all,
not running from Mexico. They're running from Venezuela. So they're
and
in
under
a
the
safe
rules,
place.
Or
under
Africa,
under international rules of asylum, you have to stop at the first country you get to where you have safe harbor.
Yes,
So then
that's correct.
they probably shouldn't even be making it to Mexico. The fact that they're getting into Mexico, because they likely are traveling through 6 different states before they even get to Mexico in the first place. So they shouldn't even, Mexico should be keeping them out on the other end of the border and saying, no, you can't come here. You have to stay in Costa Rica or Guatemala, whatever Central American country you just came through. That's what should be happening. I mean, and by the way, the problem is so dire at this point. Apparently, we have 25,000 Asians, which means that the people are being flown into Mexico for the purposes of marching across the border. At this point, how does someone not call that an invasion? If
We have Azerbaijani terrorists. We have Azerbaijani terrorists who are crossing the border. That's the problem. But going back to what you said before, that they could seek asylum where they aren't being persecuted, that's true. I don't think that Mexico's
They
safe.
must. They must.
Right, but the counter argument is also true, which is that the gangs actually are the 5th largest employer in the state of Mexico right now. The drug cartels are the 5th largest employer in the country of Mexico. So is it safe to stay in Mexico? No. But then the counter argument is also true, which is if the policy is to let everyone in and not to detain them, that means that the cartels that are chasing the asylum seekers are also being allowed in at the same time. So they're defeating their own argument by allowing everybody in and not detaining people at the border.
You're making me feel like I need to
know about
review.
any other?
No, I just want to say I need to review asylum law, because it's not a matter they have to get to a country that is deemed a safe country. It's that they have to be safe from the people who are persecuting them. So if they happen to be going to a different dangerous country, if they're not being persecuted by the gangs, if they're being persecuted for their religion in Nicaragua, and then they march into Costa Rica, Guatemala, whatever country that they march into, I really should get a map of Central America so I don't sound like an idiot. But that once they get to that next country, even if there are other dangers, that country might be overrun with tigers. That's not what they're seeking asylum from. So that's considered under asylum laws, to my understanding, to be considered a safe country where they have to stop just because there are other dangers there. That doesn't all of a sudden mean now we have a new asylum basis. You see what I'm saying? it has to be the same danger that they're still fleeing
asylum
from.
you're seeking, unless the danger that you're running from is the drug cartel. That's my point. So
Right.
I
Okay.
think you're absolutely correct. I think you're absolutely
Okay. I agree with
correct.
you on that.
If it
I agree with
were
you on that.
like, let's say the CCP who's going to murder you because you said that Xi Jinping looks like Winnie the Pooh, then yes, you are required to stop in any country that isn't going to murder you because you said that Xi Jinping looks like Winnie the Pooh.
I want to go
But-
on record as saying Xi Jinping, our glorious leader, does not look anything like Winnie the Pooh.
I want to go on record and saying he doesn't have the honor of looking like Winnie the Pooh. Okay, the guy's a tyrannical a-hole, and I hope he freaking rots in hell forever. But yeah, if the argument is that they're running from the cartels, but then we leave our border open, and every state before them leaves their borders open, so that the cartels can follow them into this country, then what's the freaking point of having asylum policy and asylum access?
They're not
anyway?
safe here. They're not safe here. They got to run to Canada.
They've got to go to
get asylum.
Canada. So my argument is move them along to Canada at that point.
Well, it's interestingly enough, New York. Well, two things. Two facts I'm just going to put out there. Number one, a lot of the migrants, you have migrants from Africa now, from Asia, and you have from the Caribbean countries, the island countries, let's say even what's it called, Haiti. A lot are coming through the southern border because they know now you can go to the southern border, you go to the port of entry and say, I'm looking for asylum, and they're letting them all in. So it's not just South America. You have a lot of people who are even from China. And it's interestingly enough, in New York, it's been so crazy in New York, where New York has been busing migrants back to Florida, Texas, and even flying people to China, back to China, because that's where they're coming from, seeking asylum in the United States. So it's just showing you that everybody's coming through the southern border because it's open. And if you want to come to the United States and you want to stay here, it's the best way to come. You don't. It's not like you got to really cross the river. I think people cross the river because they're ignorant. They don't know that they don't have to. But most people are just going through a port of entry.
You had a question for me, Ian? Because I think I cut you off when you were asking something.
Well, I mean, we kind of answered it. The question I was just going to bring up, it's kind of the higher level thought is this all manufactured? Is this all? I've never seen this where people are coming from all over the world. And is it manufactured? Is it a play for biometrics? Because at some point in time, they're going to say, listen, we're having this problem, so we need to track it, and we need to track everyone to make it be effective. Is this just a play? We could argue about asylum all day long, about the Constitution, but are people being flown in purposely? There is some news reports of these mass caravans coming from the bottom of South America all the way up, and that people were being paid by NGOs to do that. Have you heard anything about that?
I personally haven't looked into that. I think you have to be sort of naive to believe that this is organic.
I agree.
I mean, it's such a crazy influx that how now you have this sudden flood of people. Are there monsoons in Nicaragua that we don't hear about now, that all of a sudden people are?
And would that justify immigration either? By the way, monsoon. I don't know.
Well, George Soros's Open Societies came to speak at my law school while I was in law school, so that wasn't too long ago. And they explicitly pushed for open border policies and gave a huge argument as to why for 2.5 hours. That was completely sponsored by the law school. Meanwhile, when I tried to bring in, Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals judges as president of the Federalist Society, I was denied. So, there's certainly a concerted effort to manufacture the intended result. And I think that that's exactly what they're getting. They're getting open border policies, and we get to suffer the consequences. We don't have a choice. And that's what the ultimate decision is. That's the ultimate goal is we don't want borders, right? Imagine there's no people. Imagine there's no religion, no nationalities, no nothing. You're just going to own nothing. You're going to like it. You're going to eat bugs, go back to living in your pods. This is all a part of that ultimate goal, which is essentially to divest us of any power.
I'm worried about this cartel. I'm sorry. I was just going to say, real quick, I just was going to say, I'm worried about these cartel members, whether their Social Security is going to last for them like 20 years from now. Like, I worry for them. So, but you go ahead.
Well, just because to answer Ian's question about the higher level, there has been this understanding that certain populations are starting to contract. China, for instance, for those of you who don't know, just ended its one-child policy, and that's because their population has been contracting, getting older, and they're starting to lose those the labor force. The young men, young women, and those type of things to actually work and to pay into things like the retirement stuff and those type of issues. And so there's two ways that, and the United States has also had this issue with a growing population and not growing enough to sustain the population, because you need younger people to pay to take care of the older people. So there are two ways of fixing it. Either one, you can do it through immigration, or two, you can just have more babies. Now, China, for instance, ended its one child policy, and now is giving incentives to have as many babies as possible. Now, but they're saying that they may be too late. And they're saying in the United States, this is a way to grow the population to have that medial labor force through immigration. I'm not saying it's what's happening. I'm just saying that's the
I'm saying it's happening.
why you're letting.
I'm saying you're absolutely right, Nate. That's exactly what they're doing, and that's why I said it was there. Our own senators are saying the quiet part out loud. Why are you sending the labor up north when they're needed here? When I say that this is state-sanctioned human trafficking, I am not joking about this. That is exactly what it is. It is in order to dumb down the population. You're going to take people who are uneducated, generally speaking, from third world countries. You want a population that is easy to control and that cannot vote. And then when they have the rights to vote, they are already persuaded one way or the other. This absolutely benefits the elite class of individuals in our United States who don't want to work, who've never had to work, who all have benefited from their heritage of wealth. So yeah, I mean, this is exactly what it is. It is state-sanctioned human trafficking. I don't think they're wrong at all.
There's a census benefit also. If you're a state which has your citizens fleeing, and you can get an influx of illegal aliens, they count toward the census. You're able to maintain your seats in the House because you're considered to have an extra 2 million people come in there. Understand this: 6 million people that have come in here, or 8 million. From what I understand, that's larger than 33 of our states' populations.
Yeah.
I mean, that is such an astonishing number. The 33 states have a smaller population than the amount of illegal aliens that have come in here in the past 3 years. That's crazy. I mean, how do you survive as a country with maintaining that? And they want to have 4 more years of this nonsense. Good God.
Yeah, and the chap called it out exactly. There are qualified and vetted immigrants that can come here to replace the population, that can come here to increase our population and add to what our country has. They are not being allowed in. That is why I say my theory is very much geared towards having an easily controllable, lack of rights type population. We are Rome all over again. There are citizens and non-citizens. They want a non-citizen class, working labor class.
Well, with that said, I need to thank my guests for showing up. We had a hell of a debate about like everything today. Like we went round and round the circle. So we're gonna just go. Let's start with Southern Law. Please tell the people where they can find you and tell them what you got coming up.
Channel is Southern Law, so that's not hard to figure out. I don't know what I got coming up because I've got some things you and I talked about offline a little bit before we got on. So, but when I see something hit that I think isn't covered, I'm going to make a video about it. So just stand by, and it will be something at least.
Dani Ahn Direct, this is the person who I love. I've been watching some of your Friday shows. So tell the people who you are and where they can find you and what you got coming up.
I'm just so lucky to be here. Sorry I talk so much. You just got me on some really spicy topics I'm passionate about. Dani Ahn Direct, come check out my channel. I do live trial review. I do case review. I do some political review. Where the policy meets the road is in law, though. So that's where we want to stay. And come check it out. We're a ton of fun. We do have a cult. If you become a member, you will be blessed by our goddess, Aphrodite. And yeah, absolutely. Come check us out.
And you're going to be coming to Houston soon, too. So, yeah. Can't wait
Yes,
to meet
I
you.
am.
Yeah.
Not a part of the caravan, though. FBI. I'm not a part of the caravan. Okay.
Hey, listen, I gotta pass to Ian. Ian is an OG in the game. Ian is an OG in the game. So let me pass to Ian. Ian, I don't even got to tell you what to do. You know what to do. What's going on?
Of course. Thank you so much for being in on the show today. You know, it's at Ian Corzine on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. And I also started the Substack because I'm seeing there's a little bit of a creeping in of censorship about some of the topics I talk about, which is oftentimes commentating on alternative media. I also, in my private life, have a company that does offshore asset protection and other documentation kind of things. So I talk about subjects that are a little bit, crazy for YouTube. I just recently, you're going to laugh about this. This is my first one ever. Because I used to spend a lot of time counseling creators on copyright strikes. I got a copyright strike on my YouTube channel. So I know exactly what to do. Thank you. It will be fine. But anyway, yeah, just check me out on IG, TikTok, X, and we talk about kind of alternative media subjects.
Hey, Joe, good logic. Well, you know what? I'll let you read this last super chat, Joe, before you go. You go into it.
How do we survive this, Joe? You don't. And that's the point. This is an organized attempt to commit cultural genocide against the unique American peoples in our culture, which they see as anathema.
Joe, I think this person just came to set you up to give your outro, Joe. So go ahead, take it away.
Well, yeah, I mean, it really wasn't going to play well into what my pitch is for next week, which is
go ahead.
I do plan on Monday to start streaming the Crumbly trial. I think that trial is fascinating. It's the first case. If you're unfamiliar with this case, it started. They had opening statements yesterday, and started with testimonies. So we're sort of I'm going to be jumping in midstream. But the reason this case is so fascinating is these are the parents of a school shooter, and they are being criminally charged. And the first parents in American history, and this was hotly debated, went all the way up to the Michigan Supreme Court, where they decided to allow this case to proceed, and raising the questions as to the responsibility of parents who did not assist in any way, shape, or form in the shooting, but being held criminally liable for their negligence in allowing that shooting to happen or giving them access to guns. There's all sorts of Second Amendment issues, and I think that this is a fascinating case, which is a very scary. It's a very scary case as far as the ramifications it has in the long term. So I plan on streaming that this coming week, starting Monday. I'm on vacation. If you're wondering why I've been laying in bed, it's because I'm on vacation right now, and I spent all night traveling, and I haven't slept since yesterday morning. So I'm just sort of exhausted. But I do plan on being back by Monday morning. And on Wednesday, I'm actually having a 24-hour stream, which I'm going to be inviting everyone in this panel and a whole bunch of other folks as well to join me and pop in whatever time works for you. On January 31st, from midnight January 31st until February 1st, any time that works for you, you want to pop in for 15 minutes, 3 hours, whatever works for you, pop in. We'll hang out. We'll have a good time. We'll talk some law. We'll make some jokes, and we'll have a great time. And I urge each and every one of you to join me for that stream. That's going to be on I think that's Wednesday, right? It's January 31st. So that January 31st, that's going to be. And I'm probably going to be streaming the trial of the Crumblies for 8 hours of it. But I'm going to be going strong for a full 24 then. So I urge you all to check me out for that. So there you go.
Well, listen, you guys know where to find everyone on the panel. Thank you guys so much for supporting Eric. And he will be back next week, so you may or may not see my beautiful face. But again, thank you to all the panelists. Hope you guys enjoyed today's show, and I will see you on the next one. Peace.
Godspeed.